Good morning. It is the 30th of October. Good morning. It's the 30th of October, 2024. YouTube alleges that we are live. I am Bear from the internet, looking at the chat, waiting for a 5x5. Thank you, Tyler, R. Rocco, and Mr. Mike. Of course, welcome to all the noobs, everybody who's new here. I see the usual chat. Bear, you got to get on Rumble. Yeah, Bear's been on Rumble for 2 or 3 years. Rumble sucks as a platform. From the content creation standpoint, Rumble's horrendous. And the fact that I've been on there for 3 years and nobody knows it is an indicator as to how bad Rumble is. Yeah, YouTube's terrible. I know, but it's where the audience is. And as somebody said in the chat, you can always consider Patreon. Now, the show today is brought to you by the creator of the universe. You may have heard of him. It's brought to you by the fine people over at Patreon. Link is in the description. The economic engine of the Bear Nation. And of course, Refuge Medical, for whom I am the chief shilling officer because I'm also the founder and the CEO. We'll talk more about that later. I figure if we're going to shill somebody's stuff, it might as well be mine. And if we're going to talk about some kind of product, it might as well be a product that will actually save your life, not, I don't know. I don't even know what people are selling these days. You know, that like leather belt thing that hooks to a motor, you put it around your belly and you hit the switch and it jiggles your whole body and you burn calories. Like, yeah, we don't talk about that trash here. Or some like Chinese made survival knife for best to make for you for happy face, no die when Russia nuke North America. You have a best arrive, have a compass on a bottom handle. Yeah, none of that. None of that. Listen, subscribe, ring the little bell icon, do all the YouTube things. Okay? Okay, Bear. Awesome. Thank you. Now, no Ava or Rob. Ava Galucci, Rob from New Jersey. Bear, you rock. No, you rock. No, you rock. I'm just some guy with a beard on the internet. It is We're All Gonna Die Wednesday. And we're going to talk about minor things like Russia, North Korea, nuclear weapons, Israel, the Palestinians, and UNRWA, United Nations Relief Workers Agency. Some interesting things going on there. And then the current polling for the Orange Man. Okay. Sounds good, man. All right. Fabulous. So we have a written brief here, and then we'll move on to some links. Okay, Bear. All right, cool. Awesome. The military conflicts originating from both Russia and Israel are continuing to deepen international concerns. First, the conflict in Ukraine. NATO, you may have heard of them, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has confirmed that North Korean troops are in the Kursk region of Russia, and the Pentagon now estimates that roughly 10,000 North Korean troops, not just 3,000, have deployed to eastern Russia. Recently, the Pentagon made clear that if North Korean troops join Russia in the fight against Ukraine, there will be no new limits on Ukraine's use of U.S. arms. In other words, just because the North Koreans are there doesn't mean the Pentagon is going to adjust its rules of engagement for the Ukrainians. Like, if North Koreans get killed, North Koreans get killed. Now, we have a lot of new people here. I don't support the war in Ukraine, but we play the hand we've been dealt. We're here now because the world elite oligarchs have decided that we're going to have a proxy war between the United States and Russia, and the chessboard for that war is Ukraine. And then the Democrats, Rahm Emanuel, never let a crisis go to waste, have decided that they can send your taxpayer dollars over there, a couple $100 billion taxpayer dollars from the United States, and launder them back to themselves through such wonderful bastions of conservatism as Act Blue and etc. So here we are. Why is North Korea sending their troops to Russia? Well, the general talking point is, well, Russia must be running low on troops. I don't think it's that at all. I think that North Korea wants to get their troops blooded. meaning get them some actual experience in combat. It's the same reason why there are special advisors from, I think it's 26 different countries in Ukraine right now, because everybody wants to learn the lessons of this war, because the conflict in Ukraine looks far different than, for example, the global war on terror. And so, much more a return to what would be considered third generation conventional warfare, the lack of air superiority, the lack of the golden hour, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, including the grid and therefore hospitals and water and no electricity, all these different things. Um, so there's a lot of international interest to have boots on the ground to simply observe and learn the lessons, which is why twas I North Korea. Yeah, I'd send people there too, because the North Koreans don't exactly have a lot of combat experience. They don't have a long and storied history of military conflict. So this is an opportunity for them to learn. It's also an opportunity for a North Korean to get killed in Ukraine, for that to become an international incident. America kill a North Korean. We launch a nuclear missile now, right? Not great. It's not stellar as far as the continuum here of moving towards international nuclear conflict or away from international nuclear conflict. This moves us further towards, in my estimation, international nuclear conflict. So not fabulous, but here we are. And this is to make you aware of it, not so you can freak out and lose your mind. Like, we do have the occasional get your roll of Reynolds wrap it around your head 4 times. Now let's continue the conversation. We do have those talks here on occasion. This is not one of those, at least not yet. We'll see. After talks concerning the North Korean deployments, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, now he's new, Rutte is new. Remember, it was Jens Stoltenberg. Yeah, it's not Jens anymore. Our boy Jens is gone. Now we've got NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said, quote, "The deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea is a threat to both Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security." End quote. I don't know where they come up with this like gobbledygook that just falls out of their face, but it's hard even to read. Indo-Pacific, so that's the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean area, and then the Euro-Atlantic security, like so between European and North America. Okay. He should just be like, "Hey man, this shit's bad. More people could die, like on the whole globe." That's my translation. Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh told reporters, quote, "This has broad interagency implications, not just for the United States, but for, as I mentioned, Europe and the Indo-Pacific," end quote. So, second witness, "Hey guys, this is bad. People could die. Like, even more people could die. We're all going to glow in the dark if we keep going down this road." Oh, I have a quick question. Just a hypothetical question. Joe Biden has the current mental function of something akin to like a lizard. And he may actually be a lizard for all I know. I trend back and forth between lizard, person, and robot. Yeah, 12C, that's a good word. North Korean citizens in Ukraine, likely human trafficking connections, forced labor is a big North Korea export. 100%. So, in all war and all conflict, you're going to end up with the exploitation of people. And that is by definition human trafficking. Most people think human trafficking means people in cages being conveyed to a place that they don't want to go. And while that does happen, the technical term for that is human smuggling. Human trafficking is the exploitation of one person by another. One could argue, and we're going to actually look at the Ukrainian AWOL numbers, desertion numbers. One could argue that Ukraine is trafficking its own citizens to the front line. There's a thing. Have you ever heard of the national draft? One could argue that that is the trafficking of American citizens. Yeah, it's the exploitation. Trafficking is by definition the exploitation of one human being by another. Oh, so who's actually in charge? Biden has the mental capacity of like a small lizard that you buy at the pet store. You know, one of those little like 4 to 5 inch long, greenish, brownish, occasionally purplish if the light hits it the right color. One of those. You know, it eats a cricket once per week. Other than that, it's like half in, half out of the. No, not an iguana. Iguanas are way cooler than that. I'm talking like a skink, right? Like one of those things. It's half in, half out of its water dish. Yeah, there's wood chips where there shouldn't be wood chips. One of those. Yeah, that's Biden. Okay. Kamala is a moron. And this is not a political discussion. This is just based upon observation. That woman's an idiot, like straight up an idiot. And we know that she's an actual whore. Actual Willie Brown slept her way to the top. She's an actual whore. Okay. So she's unfit to lead anything. I wouldn't let her lead a parade through downtown nowhere, Oklahoma, let alone a country. Which begs the question, who's actually in charge in the United States of America? So, like when the Department of Defense, when the Pentagon makes clear that if North Korean troops join Russia in the fight against Ukraine, there'll be no new limits on Ukraine's use of US arms. Okay, who signed off on that? That's my question because one of these people is either a robot or a gecko. The other one is a moron who's currently spending all of her time campaigning. So who's actually in charge? Who is executing on the office of the president of the United States of America right now? That's my question, and it's a rhetorical question because we'll probably never know. Okay, Obama, says Richie B. Maybe it's entirely possible, but my guess is it's not anybody that was elected as the supreme representative of the United States of America. It's probably some bureaucrat somewhere, and or the shadow satanic pedophilic government, you know, the deep state. But I digress. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to request that restrictions on the use of long range strikes against Russia be lifted by the West. Ukraine's like, hey, we have HIMARS, we have ATACMS. Yo, bro, let us attack them. We want to we want to rain fire on Moscow. Which, if you've ever looked at a map, Moscow is like in the far western corner of Russia, aka it's a relatively easy target to hit from Europe, Eastern Europe, the Balkan regions, like it, or not the Balkan regions, the former Soviet states. Like it's not that hard to hit. It's kind of right there, which Ukraine is saying, "Hey, man, let us hit it." Now, why? Why is that a bad idea? For lots of reasons, but high level strategic 30,000 foot overview here. Ukraine is a proxy war between Russia and the United States. Always has been, always will be. We're here now. Um, yes, it started in 2014 when Russia took Crimea, but Russia took Crimea because the Crimean Peninsula is where the majority of their fleet was located at, and the Crimean Peninsula that they have occupied since the 1500s. The Ukrainians decided, no, you can't have this peninsula anymore. It's ours. Where did they decide that from? Well, there's been special military advisors and State Department personnel. State Department, the State Department is just like low grade spies. State Department personnel in Ukraine for the last 10 to 15-ish years. Confirmed. We have had people over there. And our people said, no, Russia can't have Crimea. Why? Well, because we're going to start a war here. Why? Because Hillary needs to launder a couple $100 billion. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Don't worry, you'll get a cut of that. Just international organized crime. So this war has been in the making for a long time. At least a decade, maybe longer. If Russia gets attacked, right, what's the end goal in this proxy war? Is it the destruction of Russia or is it the cease of Russian aggression? I don't know. I'm not in their gay little club. I don't know what their end goal is here. But let's say you nuke Russia, or don't nuke Russia, conventional weapons, and you start attacking Moscow. Well, Russia does have a nuclear arsenal. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what's the end game? See, why not finish Russia? Why not attack Russia from Ukraine with ATACMS and HIMARS and airstrikes and drone strikes and commandos on the ground? Why not do that? I don't think the big we, the American defense apparatus, actually understands the variables around a potential collapse of Russia. See, because nature abhors a void. So let's say you did attack Russia and you won. Now what? What's the plan for continuity, stability in the region? Is Moscow just the 51st state of the United States of America now? Like who do we here's the question. Who do we put in there? Who's going to take over and run things the American way? And why does that even matter? Because Russia has, and this is a technical term, has a metric shit ton of nuclear weapons. Now, we can argue the effectiveness of said weapons, but we've seen the effectiveness of Russia's artillery and Russia's armor and Russia's tactics in Ukraine. Tanks exploding and, artillery shells, exploding in the barrels of the artillery pieces rather than on the field on the intended target. Yeah, it's definitely not been great for them. Just recently, Iran, the Israeli missiles that struck Iran, it was Russia's S-300 missile defense system that was supposed to keep all those missiles from coming in. I believe the technical data, they shot 4 of the 200 missiles that came in. So what's that, a 2% hit rate? A 2% hit rate. Not great, is my point. So do their nukes even work? I don't know, but I don't want to find out if North Korea ends up with Russian nukes or the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthi and the Blowfish, Hello Kitty, anybody else. The proliferation of Russian nuclear arms internationally because of a failed Russian state is something that long-term is unsustainable for humanity, which I think to give them to give the big they a modicum of credit might be the reason why Moscow still exists, because I think technically we have the capability to wipe it off the map if we wanted to. Bear, I'm glad you're on our side. You were a little bit scary. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Yahweh is a warrior. Yahweh is his name. Exodus 15, verse 3. So, am I scary, or do I just think the strategic level thoughts here? Like, I'm not really a details guy. I'll get into the details if they matter, but what matters to me is we accomplish the thing that we set out to do. I very rarely, as far as leadership inside of my companies and my ministries, issue directives that are very explicit. Do this way at this time. That's not how I operate. I'm like, hey, this is what I want to happen. Commander's intent. Now go make that thing happen legally, morally, ethically. Here's your left and right constraints. Go get it done. If you have questions, let me know. Because I like to sit back and be up here, eyes up and out rather than down and in, observing and figuring out the strategic implications of what we're doing. Which is why when I look at how come we haven't destroyed Russia yet, I think a good reason why not to destroy Russia, even if they got it coming. And I know there's always Russian simps and trolls and bots in the chat, but even if Russia has it coming, why wouldn't we do that? Because I don't want Rocket Man, the North Koreans, to have freaking Russian nuclear bombs. That's why. Them and everybody else. Could you imagine if ISIS-K got a hold of Russian nuclear weapon? No, Jupiter Mojo. It's scary that you haven't accepted the truth that Team Crunchy will dominate at the Refuge Ruckus, refugeruckus.com. Yeah, you want to support a ministry that actually does bad stuff to pedophiles and actually rescues kids? You can go to refugeruckus.com. March 7th through 9th, We'll be there. We're going to ruck through downtown Fort Smith, Arkansas. We'll waving our middle finger to pedophiles, raising funds for Caleb House so we can keep doing what we're doing. And I, as captain of Team Crunchy, will obliterate all of you fools on Team Creamy in the tug of war. The first annual Team Creamy versus Team Crunchy tug of war. I don't even care if Striker Cade's there. I will drag his giant ass through the mud too. I'm fine with it. I'm good with it. I just want everybody here to know, for the 100th time, it's not even a question of whether or not Team Crunchy will win. It's a foregone conclusion. You can be on the winning team or you can be a loser. The choice is yours. But Team Crunchy will dominate. These are facts. Okay? Okay. Now, so that's why I think we haven't attacked/destroyed Moscow and Russia yet. Now, back to the written brief. It's important to note that there have been large cargo transport planes flying from Russia into North Korea, and it is possible that these could be transporting technical supplies for the construction of long-range ballistic missiles, which, of course, are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Guys, I don't want a giant international hot war. I know not with what weapons World War III shall be fought, but I know that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Albert Einstein. Wonder where Elon is getting all his lithium. Western North Carolina, Wyoming, and soon to be Texarkana bandit traps. Why? Because we botched Afghanistan, and that's where we were getting that stuff previously, and we're botching North Africa, we being the military-industrial complex. I'm not actually a part of it. The North Africa region, the Sahel region, where all that stuff also comes from, which has now basically been taken over by Russia. Good times. Let's see. Slate journalist Fred Kaplan opined that this distinct departure from Russia's nuclear non-proliferation policy indicates that the conflict, quote, is spinning off in dangerous, unpredictable new directions, end quote. Now, for the Middle East. 2 bills were passed by the Israeli Knesset, that's like their Congress, this last Monday, the first of which bans the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, as it should. We're going to get into that in a moment, from operating in Israeli territory. Now, we have a lot of noobs as well. Welcome, noobs. I am not team Israel, nation state of Israel. I'm not team, let's have massively overfunded wars all the way around the world at all times as the international Boy Scouts using the United States military, sending our sons and now daughters overseas to die so that Halliburton can make more money. I'm not on that team. Thank you, military man. Appreciate the super chat. I'm not on that team. Comma, if I had to pick a horse in that race, everybody else in the Middle East seems hell-bent on the destruction of the United States of America, which is where I live, versus Israel that just seems hell-bent on taking taxpayer dollars from the United States of America, which I also don't love, but at least they're not literally screaming death to America, literally. So if I had to pick somebody to support, ultimately it'd be like, no, I don't want to support anybody. This is stupid. We've got, the United States infrastructurally is falling apart. The inflation is insane. The food is poison. The medicine is poison. The politicians are corrupt. The schools are poison for your brain. Let's fix all of that first, and then if we got a couple of bucks left over, then we can figure out, do we want to send it to Lithuania or Egypt or Israel, or just invest it here domestically? And I would lean in the direction of invest it domestically. But all that being said, UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, they're a smoking pile of dog shit. We're going to talk about them in a minute. So the Knesset has decided, the Israeli Congress has decided that UNRWA is now banned from operating in Israeli territory. Second bill or second law bans any Israeli government official from having any contact with UNRWA and removes any diplomatic privilege or immunity from UNRWA workers. Essentially, as far as UNRWA's ability to function in the West Bank and Gaza is concerned, the organization is handcuffed. UNRWA Commissioner Felipe Lazzarini, that's a very Middle Eastern sounding name, by the way, isn't it? Felipe Lazzarini said in a statement that not only does the legislation violate the UN Charter and international law, also, who cares? I don't care. You violated a UN Charter. Oh, no, not that. You're trespassing. I hope your face is made of Kevlar. Have you ever seen what a 3-inch Magnum slug does to a forehead? Bye. Leave. But I digress. Felipe Lazzarini, this violates UN Charter and international law, but, quote, these bills will only deepen the suffering of Palestinians, especially in Gaza, end quote. Now, I'm not for human suffering, and I realize there are a lot of people over there, women and children, that are being exploited by their bad government, their bad leadership in the Palestinian-controlled territories over there. And I'm not for unnecessary human suffering. I also, big picture strategic, don't have the option to care about this because my taxpayer dollars are somehow funding both sides of this conflict. This legislation has prompted, quote, deep concern. Oh, and notice that the Biden-Harris administration that was simping hard for the Palestinians all of a sudden stopped doing that. All of a sudden, you haven't heard anything in the last 30-ish days about the Israel-Palestine conflict from a domestic standpoint as far as trying to solicit votes. And I don't think, we'll just go here. I don't think Kamala is going to win. Just my gut. I hope that she doesn't, but I don't think that she's going to win. And I think at this point, the Democratic Party has punted. There was a really good podcast I listened to yesterday while sitting on a track hoe at Caleb House doing dirt work. Let's be honest. It was more like dust work because it's so dry here. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. Shows the Real AF podcast with Andy Frizella and Dan Holloway, episode 804 yesterday. And Mr. Dan Holloway was saying his opinion. Let's give credit where credit is due. He was saying that he believes the Democratic Party is punting because if Kamala gets in, they don't want to run any of their rock stars like Gretchen, air quote rock stars like Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom against Kamala, and that the party itself and the Democratic supporters of the party are so disenfranchised with Kamala, they realize that the purpose, the cause is so far gone at this point, they're not gonna win. And they don't really want to at this point anyway. Okay, fine. Interesting take on the things. I don't think she's gonna win. I hope that she doesn't win. But if she doesn't win, we'll probably hear a lot less about this Israel versus Palestine argument. What does this have to do with UNRWA? Let me finish reading this part instead of ADDing out, and then I have an article pulled up on UNRWA that we're going to read in a moment. Let's see. This legislation has prompted, quote, deep concern from the Biden administration and other Western countries because of the way it will serve to worsen an already disastrous humanitarian situation in Gaza, which, to be clear, is not my fault and not your fault. And I don't think any of us are supposed to be paying for this abomination halfway around the world. Okay? In turn, this will likely put additional pressure on the White House to pause its military assistance to Israel. During a briefing, the department spokesperson Matthew Miller noted the implications the bills would have under U.S. law and policy and said, quote, if UNRWA doesn't exist, civilians, including children and babies, will not get the food they need, and this is, for us, unacceptable. Now, here's the thing. That's a big if. If UNRWA doesn't exist, civilians, including children and babies, will not get the food they need, and this is unacceptable. Accept that. if the Palestinian leadership hadn't taken all the money over all the decades leading up to this point that had been given to them for humanitarian aid so that children and babies could get fed, and instead, didn't use that money to build rockets and suicide vests and all these other things that they've built, but instead did what they were supposed to do. If they didn't have exceptionally poor leadership, they wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Somehow that's my problem. Somehow money that should be in my bank account that is then taken by the United States government under coercion, the use of force if I fail to hand it over to them, then gets laundered through the democratic machine and sent halfway around the world to support the military industrial complex because some jihadi asshole decided that instead of feeding babies, he's going to take sewer pipe and water pipe that should have been used to build infrastructure and build rockets out of it. This is somehow my fault. Bullshit. Absolute and total bullshit. Now, what about UNRWA? Well, here's the thing about UNRWA. You may remember back to October 7th, 2023, the great eighth day, the highest holy day on the religious calendar in Judaism and the Torah, God's law, not the Jews' law, but that's an entirely different conversation. Hamas, which is literally the word for violence in Hebrew, attacked Israel, and 1,000, 1,200 people were killed, like instantly, and 430-ish people were taken captive. Yeah, turns out that at least a dozen of those terrorists were UNRWA employees. Well, what does UNRWA do? You know the Gaza Strip, where all the Palestinians are? UNRWA is the de facto United Nations aid agency in that area, providing pseudo-state services to those people because their own state, their own leadership, doesn't provide any of those services. Now, UNRWA has a $1.6 billion per year budget to take care of, it's about 5 million people, shoehorned into an area approximately the size of my backyard. UNRWA had been taking that money, large portions of, and using it to train and fund actual Hamas terrorists. And under the UNRWA headquarters, 'twas found a 700-meter long, 18-meter deep tunnel built by Hamas that had all kinds of command and control equipment underneath the headquarters of UNRWA. It had been co-opted by Hamas so that Hamas could piggyback on UNRWA's infrastructure and funding for cover for action to facilitate the attacks on October the 7th. Now, 'twas I, Israel, I would tell UNRWA to pound sand as well. You guys can kiss my ass. You're not allowed to be here anymore. And if I find any one of you anywhere, I will behead you. Me personally, I will behead you on national television with a Holtzbrook 36-inch felling axe. Okay? Okay. If we go to a little article here, UNRWA. On 10 February, IDF revealed that it had found a tunnel connected to the UNRWA headquarters, blah, 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 blah. Data center, power sources, cables linked to the UNRWA building, which led to a call for the resignation of Felipe Lazzarini, that guy, because he facilitated all of this. And let's see, UNRWA was specifically established in 1949 following the Arab-Israeli War, known as Israel's War of Independence. UNRWA is separate from the United Nations main agency that handles refugees and displaced persons, known as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, created in 1950. The United Nations HCR handles all other refugees, while UNRWA is just solely dedicated to the Palestinian refugees and their descendants. This is the only thing this thing does is Palestine. That's it. That's all it does. And now, Mind you, your taxpayer dollars just in 2023 sent $422 million specifically to UNRWA. Why do I bring all this up? Who cares? Well, literally underneath the headquarters for this agency, funded with your taxpayer dollars, which was being, at a minimum, being used as cover for action, if not actually providing cover for action for Hamas, a known terrorist organization that attacked Israeli soil. Hang with me here. What's the point of the last 10 minutes of this conversation? We're going here. Pay attention. Okay. Especially you passive listener people. Barry, you said this thing on the internet and it made me mad. You didn't listen to the last 10 minutes and you weren't actually listening when I said half the things you guys get pissed off at, I didn't actually say. Pay attention. Okay. Hamas was facilitated by this pseudo-governmental agency funded with taxpayer dollars, so much so that their headquarters was underneath the headquarters of UNRWA. And they used that cover to be able to facilitate attacks on the domestic homeland in Israel. How many known? FBI says there's how many terror cells, not terrorists, terror cells in the United States of America? Oh, that's right, 4,000. And if we say a cell is 4 or more people, that puts us at 16,000 known terrorists here on domestic soil. We know there's been a minimum of 400,000 additional, 400,000. That's approximately twice the size of the United States Marine Corps military-age males that have come across our poor southern border during this current administration, which we know is bought and paid for by China. Why does China care? Who's China's bestie? Russia. Who does Russia fund? Iran. Who does Iran fund? Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, who attack who? Israel. Why? Because Israel is supported by the United States. It's all asymmetric proxy warfare. Okay. 400,000 minimum. It could be as high as 800,000. Other estimates are over 1 million military-age males that have come across our poor southern border in the last 3.5 to 4 years. Funded by who? Well, where did all the FEMA money go that Alejandro Mayorkas can't find in order to take care of the people of Florida and Appalachia after Milton and Helene? Oh, that's right. They used those funds to relocate these air quote immigrants, illegals across the southern border. Why? It's just a quick question. Why? Have you seen the procurement that's out on sam.gov for people like certain agencies out there? They're like, we need 1.4 million plate carriers. You only have 200,000 employees. Where's the other 1.2 million plate carriers going? Oh, the United States Postal Service needs 7 billion rounds of ammunition. What could they possibly need that for? Because it's the Postal Service. By the way, did you know under the continuity of government plan developed during the Cold War that the Postal Service has a couple of very interesting, this is fact, government fact, to the extent that anything in the government can be considered fact, has a very couple of very interesting purviews. One is the delivery of vaccines if there's a domestic pandemic. That's super interesting. The other is all those little USPS white box van mail delivery things can also double. They're designed to be doubled as ambulances or for the conveyance of body bags. Oh, and also they carry the ballots for the elections that are basically orchestrated and then stolen to give the illusion of a representative republic here in the United States of America. You might need the tinfoil now. So UNRWA literally facilitate the United Nations Relief Workers Agency using your taxpayer dollars literally facilitated terrorist attacks on Israel. Why do we care? Because it could have been a proof of concept for what is happening here in the United States of America. We know the exact same tunnels that they find between Gaza and Israel, we are finding between Mexico and Texas, Mexico, and Arizona. We know that the same people that are funding what's happening over there in the Middle East are funding what's happening on our southern border. We know that the same people are actually perpetuating, performing these insertions on the southern border. And we know that the same taxpayer dollars that's being taken out of your paycheck and my paycheck that funded Hamas and Cover for Action UNRWA to the tune of $422 million just last year is funding what's happening on the southern border, except the scale of which is 100 to 1. And the reason I bring this up is because you may not know this, but in approximately 6 days, we're going to have an air quote election here in the United States of America. And there's a whole bunch of people that aren't supposed to be here. And I've been saying this for 2 years, but many of y'all are new. I believe, based upon the intelligence, that part of why those people are here is as a fail-safe. Now, if Kamala can't win, and her party doesn't want her to win anyway, and Trump gets elected, air quote elected, right? They allow Trump to win. Remember what happened during the last Trump presidency. Oh, here's a global pandemic. If he truly is an outsider and they truly don't like this guy and they're truly afraid of him, that he's going to try and hold their feet to the fire and bring some accountability, and that truly tyrants are going to swing from ropes and trees, which I'm all for. Okay, what tools do they have in their toolkit in order to be able to stay his hand asymmetrically? He says he wants to do A, B, and C. That's cool. He's going to have to deal with X, Y, and Z. Implement Plan Bravo. Okay, have these million military-age males who have come into the country just start shooting people. 4-man terror cells. The FBI knows there's at least 4,000 of them domestically. 4 guys with rifles. Even 4 guys poorly trained with rifles. They go into soft targets like schools and churches and synagogues and malls, to the extent that anybody goes to malls anymore, and movie theaters and governmental offices, Capitol buildings, and just start shooting, who also have a death wish because many of these are radical Muslims. And so they think that they're accomplishing a jihad. They're doing Allah a favor by dying in service to the jihad. It's chaos actual. And then what do they get? Then they get to clamor for, we need these weapons of war off the street. 230,000 Americans were killed in the last week with this uprising of, weapons of war on the street. And they get to take away your Second Amendment rights, or at least try to, and do that thing that they do after any crisis, Patriot Act anyone, take even more federal power away from the citizenry. So that's why I care about UNRWA and the Middle East, because it's proof of concept potentially for what is happening at our southern border. Because it's all the same players. It's the same tax money. It's the same Democrats. It's the same terrorists. It's the same infrastructure. It's the same modus operandi. It's the same cover for action. It's the same play. They're just playing on a different field. It's like a football team that has their book of plays, and it doesn't matter what field they're playing on or who the other team is. It's an at-home game or an away game. This is just an away game for them. Okay? So that's why I care. That's why we went on that 10-minute diatribe on UNRWA. Everybody tracking? Yeah, we're tracking like a tank bear. All right, fabulous. That's why I care. What else should we look at? Now, let's look at probability versus possibility here. Possible, 100%. Yeah, this shit is all the way possible. Even likely at this point, which brings us to probability, because all things are possible. So I don't freak out about all things, because the probability of something that's possible can still be incredibly low. But let's go to the Russian nukes thing. Probability that I get nuked by a Russian, very low. But the implications are so impactful. The literal fallout is so impactful on my life or lack thereof that I want to mitigate that risk to the best of my ability. That, by the way, noobs, is our working definition of preparedness here. Preparedness is perpetuating normalcy for the people that you love. It's a physical insurance policy coupled with a skill set and a heart set and a tool set in order to be able to use the things that you have for the preservation of life. And so it's risk mitigation, it's insurance. And so there's some things that are very low probability, but the possibility is so impactful that we mitigate that risk anyway, right? The probability that we have large-scale domestic terror attacks here, I'd say is actually very high. I'd say it's over 50%. And I give that with high confidence based upon all of the indicators. All the lights on the board are blinking red when it comes to domestic terror attack. They're there. The only thing I don't know is the timetable. Is it going to be before the election or after the election? And I'm leaning in the direction of after the election because I don't think the Democrats can actually pull this election off, which means they're going to inherit another Trump presidency as a lame duck whose rhetoric and messaging is getting more and more extreme from their worldview, their standpoint by the day. Well, let's complicate things for him so he can't do all the things he says he wants to say. Last time it was COVID. This time it's going to be domestic terror attacks or whatever. So I'm leaning in the direction of after the election, hoping, knowing that hope isn't a method, hoping that that's not the case. But it brings us to, you got to be freaking prepared, sir or ma'am. You just have to be. If you can't see everything that's happening in the world and think to yourself, I should probably do something to mitigate that risk. I'll mitigate that risk. Come here, baby.
She looks cutesy.
She looks cutesy. Oh, hello. Hello. Hello, little one. You say hi to the people? Yeah. Yes. It is the squish. Yeah. Are you prepared for the apocalypse?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got you, Dad.
Yep. You're drooling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 You see the people? Yeah. There they are. Oh, no. Nana's here too? Yeah. What are you doing? You having a fabulous day? You gonna do it? You gonna do it? No, you don't want to do it?
Do the toot toot.
Come on, man. Be cool. What? What is it? Yeah. See, this is why we prepare. This is why we mitigate risk, because I am commanded, required by the creator of the universe to raise these things up in the way that they should go so they do not depart from it when they are older. This is my purpose, right? Preservation of life. First for my family, then for everybody else. So, mitigate risk. If you don't know how to prepare, we have a free playlist here on this channel called the Prepper Classroom. No fluff, no BS, no you got to buy all this stuff or you're going to die. None of that. Just how much food do you need? How much water do you need? Where should you relocate to if you need to relocate? How do I insert question here? Prepper Classroom. It's free. It's all tabulated in a playlist here on YouTube, and it's shareable. So if you need to evangelize to somebody, send them a link to the Prepper Classroom, right?
Correctamundo, Daddy.
Correctamundo. Hey, do you need something to chew on? Now, I'm going to tell you guys very quickly about this chew toy for babies right here. So this is a bleeding prevention kit from Refuge Medical. It's one of my companies right here. And not only will it stop a critical bleed, you got a tourniquet, a real one, Cat Gen 7 from North American Rescue, combat gauze, pressure bandage. It also makes a great chew toy for babies. So if you're looking for like some multi-use, see that? Yeah. Is that tasty? Yeah, that's so good. Daddy, this tastes like a life. Where do I get this from, Dad? It's refugemedical.com. You can use promo code SQUISH. Nothing will happen, but you could use it if you wanted to. But yeah, come check us out, Refuge Medical. We got everything you need when it comes to first aid kits. In fact, I got to get together with a local police department today and outfit a bunch of their officers and their schools, because they have, and I won't tell their business on camera, but let's just say they've had some very concerning issues leading up to this election of people threatening to do things and trying to do things. And so they reached out yesterday and they're like, hey, we need help. It's like, awesome. Good on you for admitting you need help. We're really good at this. We train trauma medicine all across the country. We've trained over 5,000 people. And our kits are on 4 continents with 137 lives saved to date. So, come see us. Now, okay, I got to talk about Putin and Russia real quick, Mama. Say bye.
Pleasure to make a showing.
Say bye, Fushy.
It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
Say bye-bye. Say bye.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you gotta give her
She
to.
doesn't want to go.
You want to talk about Putin?
What do you?
She might be Putin.
Well, you got to swing the band hammer in the chat. Is there anybody that needs to get it? Yeah. Okay. All right, Ma. Thank you for the visit. Mucho apreciado. Do-do-do-do. All right, we talked about UNRWA. Let's see, more than 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers have deserted, according to the MP. Blah blah blah. This is coming from RT. So much so that Ukraine is now adjusting their protocols, that you will no longer get punished for going AWOL the first time if you just come back to the front lines. Why? Who cares? Because I think the Ukrainian populace is seeing through the bullshit as well. They're just like, I'm not going to go over there and fight and die so that Hillary can increase her stock portfolio. Yeah. So there's an article on that at russiatoday.com if you want to go check that out. But the official numbers are more than 100,000 people combatants have deserted on the Ukrainian side. So that's fun. Now, again, understanding, right, know the source. Everybody has a bias. Of course, RT is going to report that 100,000 people have deserted in Ukraine because RT is Russian state media. And the Russians and the Ukrainians don't really like each other. Why? Because proxy war between the United States and Russia. Orange Man polls. This is interesting, coming from MSN.com, which is a USA Today poll, if we care, to the extent that voting matters at all. And I'm still not entirely convinced that it does. But I do think everybody who's convicted to vote should go vote so that we have the data. If they steal the election, we can say, actually, no. But yeah, we'll see. Whatever. The USA Today, this is the first poll I've specifically seen reported that is actually showing, there's at least one poll that shows Trump in the lead. So that's interesting. And if we think about front-loading the data so that the big they, can manage the expectations of the populace, control the narrative. It's the first poll that I've seen where Trump is actually winning. Trump leads Harris 48 to 47%, according to a Reuters and Ipso. And that's in Wisconsin. And then in Minnesota, it's still tight. And then in Michigan, she's still technically leading in the poll, blah, 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 blah. So what's the point? The point is it looks like they may be beginning to shift the Overton window on the narrative to Trump could win for damage control. And then lastly, This I found interesting from RT.com. Putin launches nuclear exercise. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced the launch of a strategic nuclear deterrence exercise. The drill will involve ballistic and cruise missile launches, the leader said on Tuesday. That was yesterday. The nuclear triad remains a reliable guarantor of Russia's security and sovereignty, Putin stressed, adding that it also helps maintain, quote, nuclear parity and the balance of power in the world, end quote. In other words, Putin is flexing to just remind everybody, hey, we got some nukes too. You want to FAFO? All right, you want to go, homie? I'll see you in the parking lot. Your parking lot will be made of glass when I drop the sun on top of it. Putin shaking his rusty antique saber. I know, Tim, and see, that's the thing. Putin is shaking his rusty antique saber, comma, a saber, even a rusty antique one, can still cut you, right? So all that guy has is a Mosin Nagant. I've got my whatever, my HKG3. I've got my new M7 M8 battle rifle and 6.8 by 51 millimeter with the $7,000 Vortex ballistic scope on top of it. Yeah, but you just got shot with 7.62 Russian, and your lungs are now 30 meters behind you, sprayed into a bush. It was just a Mosin Nagant. It's like, yeah, but you got hit with it. And that's the thing. It is a rusty saber that Putin is rattling. But a rusty saber can still cut you if it's in the hands of the right person. And that's the mental calculus there. We don't even know that Putin's arsenal works, right? And I was talking about that earlier. But I don't want to find out the hard way that it does work. And that's literally nuclear deterrence. That's literally nuclear deterrence. Exactly, Striker Cade. 7.62 by 54 rimmed is no joke. Even coming out of a Mosin. I mean, what was the Dreyse needle fire rifle? You know, bolt action, the first military bolt action rifle. That's 200-year-old technology. I still don't want to get shot with it. Like, I want to get shot with zero things, preferably. So, yeah, a rusty antique saber can still cut you, is my point. So back to Putin's thing here. Russia seeks to maintain its nuclear forces at the, quote, necessarily sufficient level, end quote, but does not intend to be dragged into a new arms race, Putin said. So a new arms race. Well, yeah, that's because Russia doesn't have the money. Actually, they seem to be doing pretty good under this current regime of sanctions that the United States has imposed upon them because of the Ukraine war. But even that may just be a facade because most of the income that Russia has had has come from China, and China's economy absolutely appears to be collapsing. All indicators. They built enough homes for another 1 billion people in China because the Chinese, air quote, retirement plan or investment policy was heavily leveraged in real estate. China doesn't have another 1 billion people. They have ghost towns, ghost cities that are brand new that nobody lives in. China's running out of money. So how much longer can Russia's economy be supported by China? Not that long. And, you know, as far as nuclear parity with the United States, between the United States and Russia, even in our current 2024 economic slump, Russia's GDP, gross domestic product, is 1/7 that of the United States. The United States produces 7 times more revenue than Russia does. And China, you know, the other big kid on the block. Okay, China's GDP is approximately 40%. So 40% the United States. So America's GDP is 2.5 times China's GDP. So maybe the sanctions will work at some point. Or maybe we're going to find out if the rusty saber is still sharp. Let's see. Russia reaffirms its principled stance that the use of nuclear weapons is an extreme, exceptional measure to ensure state security, the president said. Moscow's strategic forces are outfitted with state-of-the-art equipment by 94%, according to Putin. Trumps will also receive new stationary and mobile missile systems that have higher precision and shorter launch preparation time compared to previous generations. The new systems will also have higher anti-missile defense penetration capabilities, stated the president. The Russian Navy is set to be supplied with new atomic submarines and modernized strategic bombers, according to the president. On October 14th, NATO launched its own large-scale nuclear drills. 13 member states of the U.S.-led bloc participated in the annual Steadfast Noon exercise, which involved around 2,000 military personnel and over 60 aircraft. European NATO members were training to deploy U.S.-provided weapons under the organization's nuclear sharing arrangement. The Kremlin said at the time that the drills would only increase tensions between Russia and the West amid the Ukraine conflict. I agree with that. Moscow has also stated that the NATO nuclear sharing system is against the spirit of nuclear nonproliferation. Last month, Putin gave his homie Lukashenko and Belarus nuclear weapons as well. So again, understand they're all talking points. Russia is not for nuclear proliferation. Also, crazy despotic ruler of Belarus, here's a whole bunch of nuclear weapons because we're homies. Also, North Korea, here's some nuclear weapons because we're homies. But Russia is not for nuclear proliferation. Shut up. Okay. Last month, Putin also suggested updates to Russia's nuclear doctrine. Under the changes, an act of aggression against Russia and its closest ally, Belarus, by any non-nuclear state, including Ukraine, quote, with the participation or support of a nuclear state, end quote, so the United States, would be considered a joint attack that could trigger a nuclear response, which is part of why probably Moscow is still standing, even though the Ukrainians, which, let's be honest, is the United States providing all of the weaponry, all of the funding, all of the target development, all of the intelligence, all of the communications, which is probably part of why 100,000 Ukrainians have deserted from the front lines, because it's not their war, it's our war on their soil. It's part of why Moscow is still standing, because we can see it, we can hit it. It's right there, sir. Please let us hit it with missiles. It's like, yeah, but if we do, Russia could nuke the United States mainland territory. Maybe. Because maybe it's a rusty saber, and maybe it's still sharp enough to cause you to bleed. We don't know, and we don't want to find out the hard way. What can you do about that? I would live in a place that wasn't a juicy nuclear target, myself personally. That's why I live in eastern Oklahoma. I could live anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and I choose to live here. I love it here. They will use EMP, says Seraphim. Will they? I think what you meant to say is they could, because nobody knows, right? In intelligence, we have to rightly divide between what we think and what we know. They could use EMP, high altitude EMP, and that would actually make more sense, because you don't nuke something you want to occupy, you nuke something you want to deny to your enemy. I have videos on EMPs. I've built a lot of the United States power transmission infrastructure and some generation infrastructure as well. Department of Energy, give it 12 months, 90% of Americans are dead due to a lack of electricity. That's totally believable. So I would live in a place that's not a juicy target for a nuclear weapon, and I'd have some backup generation and some water and food put up. I would have some homies, and I would have some weaponry, and I would know how to use it. And I would also be really, really good at making food come up out of the ground, because the whole thing's going to go away at some point. And I say this with no joy, we are in an end stage empire. The United States is in an end stage empire right now. And the big question is, do we decline on the world stage, or do we have an America 2.0? The second 250 years of the new America on the world stage. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure that anybody does. Either way, very interesting time that we're all living in, which is why you should be right with the creator of the universe, which is why you should have a strong purpose, your family, your friends, your loved ones, which is why you should be doing the things that you need to be doing to be prepared for whatever may come. I got a video coming out on Patreon tomorrow called Building Blocks. And what I mean by building blocks is when you have enough skills enough knowledge, enough people, enough equipment. It doesn't matter what the external stimulus is. Did we get EMP'd or did we get nuked? Was it a flood or a hurricane or a tornado or a fire? It just is. You get good enough at building with the building blocks that regardless of whatever the external stimulus is, you can respond to it appropriately. And so my encouragement to you would be A, go watch that video that'll drop tomorrow on Patreon, and B, gather your building blocks because we don't know what we're going to have to build. It's going to depend on what the external stimulus is, but we know we're going to need to be able to build. Hopefully that makes sense. And with that, we shall pray. Good morning, Father Yahuwah. Father, thank you for allowing us to wake up this morning. Father, that thank you that regardless of what happens out there in the world, that you are sovereign over all things. Father, thank you that your ways are not our ways, that your ways are higher than our ways, and that whatever we might face is your will made manifest. And even if we don't understand it, we do understand that all things work together for the good of those who love you, even if we can't make sense of it. And Father, that is proof of your sovereignty, that it doesn't matter whether I agree with what you do or not. What matters is what is. And so, Father, I pray that you'd make all of us strong enough to accept your will and what is, and to walk in your will to the best of our ability. That we would be in union, echad, one with you, by the blood of your Son. That we might be able to navigate this treacherous world in a way that still brings a smile to your face, in a way that still shines the light of your word and your truth, in a way that still brings healing and compassion and love to those who need it. And Father, in a way that brings righteous judgment on those who need it. Father, I pray that no weapon formed against us would prosper. Please put a hedge of protection around your people and guide us by your Ruach HaKodesh, your Spirit, to walk in your ways, to speak your words, to be where we need to be today and every day, simply to make you look good. Thank you for living life with us. Thank you for not being just some abstract concept, but for being truly real and sovereign and manifested in our daily lives. Thank you for showing up and showing off when your children need you. Father, I'm getting that there are people out there who need healing, physical and emotional and spiritual. So, Father, I'm asking you to minister to them, please. Please reveal yourself to them in ways that are undeniable for your glory. Father, wrap them up in love. Comfort them. Make them whole again. Speak to their innermost parts, Father. Put your hand on them and steward them through whatever it is that they are going through. Father, there are those that need provision. I pray that you would provide miraculously. And there are those that need reassurance. So I pray that you would reveal yourself to them, that they would know you, that they would know, not think or believe or pray, but that they would know you, that they would speak to you face to face like a friend, that they would trust in you. Father, there are those who are fearful. And so if there's anything within the sound of my voice that is not of you, I rebuke it in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach and command it to flee. Much better. Father Yah, let us fear nothing but you. Give us this day our daily bread. Let us not be worried about the little things, Father, but instead let us go out and be your hands and feet. Teach the world about who you really are and who they really are. And that it's all going to be good, even if it's not easy, even if it's scary. It's all going to be good. Father, thank you for that certainty and for that confidence. Thank you for redeeming us back into your house, making a way for the least of us to come home again. Father, I pray that you'd make your face to shine upon these people today, that they would experience your shalom, your peace, and that there would be miraculous provision, protection, and blessing. And I ask all these things in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. I appreciate y'all. And I will see you when I see you. Oh, Bible video will be out Sunday morning. Now that I'm back from grindstone deployment, the content's going to start rolling again. So the prophet Nahum, we'll be reading his book together Sunday morning. Go check that out. A lot of y'all, especially you new people, have been asking Bible questions. I've read all of the New Testament from Matthew chapter 1 through Revelation chapter 22 on camera. Playlist is here at this channel. And most of the Old Testament. We're in the minor prophet Nahum now. And it'll be a few more months, and we will have read every word of the Bible together on camera. And so if you have questions, hey, Bear, what do you think about YouTube search bar, Bear Independent Bible chapter? And you'll probably find a video on it. And I would say to you, that is probably the most true, authentic version of me you're going to get, is spending time together in the Word. So if something here has convicted you, well, you don't need me as an intercessor between you and the Father. That's Messiah's job. But if I can help instruct you in that, go consume that content. Because we can talk about Hamas and Russian nukes and the southern border and the election all day. And we do sometimes. But none of it matters if you don't have the faith part figured out. Preservation of life for what? Just to die at the end of an age? That's stupid. So, everyone dies. Not everyone gets to live. And if you're uncertain about that today, you need to have a conversation with the Creator. Humble yourself. Confess your sins. And repent. Shuv. Turn from your wicked ways. and commit yourself to the preservation of life. And with that, shalom.